Welcome to the Dental Business Guide podcast. From money to marketing to management, this podcast will help you run a better dental business.
Well, hello today, and it's Aaron here, back on the Dental Business Guide podcast. And today we're going to be talking about our DSO playbook that we recently wrote here at Samera Global, talking about what the things that DSOs need to be doing over the next 5 years to really maximize the value of their DSOs. And luckily enough, I've got my partner in crime today, Dr. Smita, with me today to discuss this. So, hi Smita, how are you doing?
Hello, Kyle. How are you, Aaron? Thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem at all. And it's very easy to invite you, as you are my business partner and my wife. So we're going to talk about some really important aspects of this DSO playbook, and really maybe you can shed some light and your experiences on this podcast today. So if you can give me a little bit of a background about who you are, your background, just for every listener's benefit, really.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm a dentist, first and foremost, I suppose, even before I met you. Mm. So I qualified nearly 30 years ago. Wow, gosh. I was a child, obviously, when I qualified. So yes, qualified, worked for a few years as on the NHS, and then finally moved to London, and you know that part, and eventually opened up my first squat practice, the Neem Tree, back in 2004. Since then, in total, I've opened squat-wise, run, and then sold along the way 5 Neem trees, which have all been squats. Could call me a bit of a squat junkie, really. And here we are now with 2 of the Neem trees still running, the original ones. One's in Wandsworth Town in London, which was opened nearly 22 years ago now. And then one in Esher, that's in Surrey, and that was opened in 2010. So that's what I'm doing right now. And of course, very much involved in the Samera side of things, and very excited about the playbook and everything that there is to do in it and what it stands for.
And just to give everyone the benefit and understanding, these clinics are all private clinics, have always been private from day one, correct?
Yes, they're fully private, and I am very much hands-off in terms of clinical side of dentistry. Haven't really had a list of my own patients for approximately 18 years now, when our second child was born. So that's the way it is. I obviously cover emergencies and sometimes cover people on holidays, etc. Mostly act as a triage dentist, but otherwise it is completely associate led.
Okay. So let's go on to that first question, which relates to this whole aspect of the DSO playbook. And one of the points we've highlighted in the book is the one-man show risk. Okay, so we all know that investors always get nervous if a business relies too much on the owner. So I've seen over the years small groups, even large groups, where one of the owners is very much prevalent in not just in making all the decisions of the business, but also very prevalent in doing a lot of the high ticket revenue generation of the business. And if that revenue generation isn't there, or if that clinician gets sick or has to go on holiday, the dental clinic or the dental group has a massive impact financially. So the question I have for you, Smita, what did you do to make sure your practice stays successful, even when you aren't the one doing actually any of the dentistry really now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was a very conscious decision many years ago, born in my case, actually, as a lifestyle choice, due to having children and having to take a career break. But I never took a career break from the actual clinics or running the clinics, but it was more from the wet-handed dentistry side of things. And then it kind of sort of spiraled onto being actually a really good idea when the decision was made that I wanted to expand the clinics, because I was then in a very good position to actually spend 100% of my time opening the clinics, running them for a short while, and then handing them over to very able clinicians or associates. And as time went on, obviously, I built up a little bit of a black book of associate dentists, whether they be GDPs or specialists, that then came in sort of into my little pot of core people. And allowed me to really work with great clinicians who were both brilliant clinically, very good with patients, and earned a good hourly rate, which meant that I could sit back a little bit from the clinical side and just grow the business and market them, really, which ended up being a bit of a win-win situation. And then I used that model as and when I grew the practices, and it seems to have worked quite well and in my favor.
Okay. So on that note then, very interesting. You stepped back, you didn't do clinical work. As you said, you might step in occasionally for an emergency purpose only. What investors see, what buyers see when they're buying groups is a red flag if staff or team members or dentists are constantly leaving. So what have you done to make sure that you attracted the best clinicians and then ultimately retain them for the long haul?
It's a very good question. I think it's taken some time to get that core team of clinicians. And I'm not saying I didn't lose a few along the way, but I think the key thing here is that you want to try and keep the good clinicians happy. And what keeps good, skilled, artistic clinicians happy is keeping them busy. And I think in many practices where the principal dentist almost creams the sort of cream of the patients away and the high ticket items themselves and gives the associates the lower sort of value patients in terms of needing treatment, that I've seen firsthand, it kind of demotivates a lot of people who I've spoken to along the way. And I've always made sure that in our clinics in the Neem Tree, firstly, it's not run by me clinically. My role, and I tell them this, my role is to market you. So I want to hear all about your qualifications, all about your experience, all about the type of dentistry that you want to do and what stands you out. And then I'm going to make it my business, instead of taking all the patients from you, I'm going to make it my business to actually sell those skills, whether it's through the website, whether it's through seeing emergency patients and triaging them to you, or just training the team at the front desk to actually sell your skills. And they, rightly so, they love this support because I genuinely mean it. I'm there to support my associate dentists and hygienists, so all of the clinicians. And that works well because we're all singing off the same hymn sheet.
Okay, so on that note then, so if you go back to the mix of services that you provide in your clinics, again, investors always get very risky if that clinic just does implants or just does ortho, okay? How did you add other services like Invisalign, orthodontics, etc., to make sure you weren't putting all your eggs in one basket? What was your approach to finding those right clinicians, and how would you hire them? How would you test them? How would you interview them? All that type of stuff. What would you do?
Well, the first thing to get a mix of services in a practice is really, really important. And back in Wandsworth, 22 years ago, we first started off with a base layer of GDPs, myself and a couple of other people, where we were general practitioners. And then we started to build up a profile of patients and treatments, and eventually started to bring in certain services and service providers like orthodontists, etc., to sort of test the waters. Since then, my recruitment has changed. And what I now try and do is I try and employ, if I'm employing a GDP, I'll always employ them with obviously the GDP base, but with a special interest. For example, orthodontics or pedodontics, or with a slant towards surgery or implants or anything like that, or restorative prosthodontists. So that way you're already bringing extra skill sets in. And then obviously the next recruit will be complementary to them. So there might be an Invisalign, special interest in an Invisalign, for example, and so on and so forth. And that way you're building up a nice cycle of or a base layer of GDPs with nice complementary skill sets that actually take them to the next level. If, for example, the Invisalign gets very, very busy and then there is a higher need for orthodontics, because of that, with the extra pair of eyes for ortho or Invisalign, then we will hire in orthodontists especially. And as I say earlier, I've got a little black book now of people that I can call upon. Very lucky to have built this black book of specialists that I can call upon to come and service the needs of the clinic. But it's very important to have a good mix of treatments, services, really to have a one-stop shop. Ultimately, the patients are the most important people in our clinics. And I don't want a patient to have to go here or there, either for diagnostics, or for specialist services. Once they come to us, they need to stay there. I need to bring them the clinicians and everything that they might need.
Okay. So let's go back to your story or your history over the last 20 odd years. Okay. What the question is the hardest part. What was the biggest challenge in moving from being that dentist to being the owner of a group? Okay. What was that biggest challenge for you from a mindset point of view, firstly, and then secondly from a commercial aspect as well?
Honestly, the biggest challenge for me was to hang up my gloves, in terms of taking a list away from myself and just saying, okay, now I'm just going to be not wet-handed. I'm not saying I'm not purely, I mean, I don't do any dentistry at all, but I'm very, very light in terms of, I mean, I haven't done a crown prep, etc., or a bridge prep or anything more complicated than a single surface filling for, approximately 18 years. And I think the biggest challenge for me was to lose that control, because ultimately, we spend a good 5 years, 6 years with VT, etc. We spend a good 5-6 years training to be a wet-handed dentist. So to undo that training and to then look at spending your time on working on the business rather than in the business was the biggest challenge. Once I got away from that mindset and started to see the benefits of working on the business rather than just in the business, it really opened my eyes, because that's something that we at university were never trained to do. So it was a whole another level of training, which I'm very grateful for right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So now, really going back to the business side of things, investors all want to, the clinical side you've touched on briefly today, okay? But for any person or any group or any bunch of investors wanting to buy a DSO, they want to look at the systems that are in place, that are in a business, okay? So how did you go about building these kind of central backbone for things like recruitment, for things like dealing with finance or accounting, without it all becoming a mess? What was your strategy there?
Well, there's quite a few angles here. I could talk all day about hiring and recruitment. Recruitment has been a changing beast over the last 22 years. It's very much changed. It's less time consuming in some ways, because it's all been quite systemized now. But then the workforce has changed so dramatically over the last 22 years. Well, it's changed so much since COVID, as you know, and then of course Brexit. So the supply of personnel and team members, whether they be clinicians or support staff, has changed so dramatically. And I think you only need to talk to any principals of any dental practices out there to get good support staff these days is a bit of a nightmare. But that's for another day. In terms of the backbone financially, I mean, from day one, we had certain financial controls in place which mapped out the business and the day-to-day running of the practice, including, systems and filing ways. First, it used to be in paper and then obviously digitally, of all invoices, lab sheets, and the day-to-day figures, obviously. And so at a moment's notice, we could look at the profit and loss of the business, and take hold of all of these measures at an instant. And that's been a real guiding force. And I have to say, Samera has been the guiding force from day one.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's been a really important aspect of
because it's allowed me then to work as either a clinician in the earlier days or as somebody working on the business to grow the people. Because for me, and certainly my skill set, it's all about the people. So if I had to be sort of, neck deep in paperwork and financial controls from day one, that's not my skill set. I would have been extremely miserable. And B, not very good at it. And C, not being able to grow my team, my people, in helping them be the people and the clinicians that they truly are. And I think my time has been much better spent there rather than doing all of the financial control of side of things.
So, and that's a very valid point, because I've been seen many groups and practices over the years where they've been very good clinically, but they've failed in having that central backbone system. Yeah. So when it comes to valuing the group, it looks very great on paper, but when it comes to the financial due diligence of the investors, they dig deeper and it's a bit of a shambles. And therefore, either they discount the price of what they're going to pay, what they say they're going to pay in the first place, or they decide, you know what, I'm not going to proceed. Okay, there's just too many unknowns. So the foundation of having that accounting platform, robust, clean, clear, so that you can see the EBITDA of a particular clinic at a moment's notice, is fundamental to any type of
and it makes you also, as a business prospect that somebody's buying, it makes you very much more transparent, and you know, there's so much more integrity there, because at a moment's notice somebody can say, okay, we're interested in your business, can you provide all of the figures for us? And within sort of moments you're like, here they are, and this is what we've got. There is no, or the appearance as well from a buyer's point of view, there's no sort of fiddling going on and window dressing the practice or doing this or doing that underhand stuff, which I know, you know, I have seen sort of third hand happen through the years. And, you know, I just don't have time for it, and also not the appetite for it. And I think any shrewd buyer will sniff that out. So if things are well controlled and run in an efficient way, then it just makes it a much smoother transition and easier, less headache for you as a seller.
Yeah, correct. So the foundations are key.
Yes.
Any group that hasn't got that right needs to do that. And I was talking to a group the other day, they've got 7 or 8 clinics and they've been doing a good job with their financials, but they could do a significantly better job if they were organized in a way that makes the business so much more valuable to an incoming buyer. They don't have to make these changes. They don't have to dig through the inconsistent ways of reporting data.
Yeah, and they've got a history of that consistent data. It's not like, until a year ago we were very inconsistent. Now suddenly, because we decided to sell a couple of years ago, suddenly we've started to put all these amazing systems into place. It's very obvious and it's very visible where you're coming from. So, you know, if you are thinking of selling, this needs to be done a few years in advance, not just literally a few months in advance.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads me on to the last question. Okay, so we've talked about in this playbook the 2030 deadline. Okay, there's a 5-year window or golden window for selling. Okay, if you're trying to get out in 2030, you've got 5 years to get your house in order. So why is it so important for a dentist to start tidying up their business now if they want to sell in a few years, Smita?
Yeah, I'd say it's a 4-year window now, but I think it's we're looking at 2031 now, aren't we? Well, yeah. Can't believe the year where time is flying. But yeah, I think that's sort of, I guess that's similar to what I was just saying earlier, is that, you know, these things don't just happen within minutes or within days or even within weeks. You know, if you are considering selling and perhaps you don't have the consistency levels in financial monitoring and control that we've just spoken about, then I would definitely give it a good 5-year window, or as long as possible. If not 5, then 4 years, and so on and so forth. But I certainly wouldn't leave it to the last 12 months and suddenly think, okay, what do I do now? Because sure, people want your last 12 months forecast, but they will also go a lot further back to see how the business has been performing. Now, there are environmental factors, of course, and in our case, obviously we had COVID and so on and so forth, but generally people will want to go back more than 12 months. So you want to try and get all your ducks in a row and things looking like they have some shape and some order, giving you less of a headache on a day-to-day basis. But then, of course, from a buyer's perspective, thinking, wow, you know, this is a great sale, because not only am I inheriting this wonderful business, but look how well it's run. I effectively don't have to do that much at the helm, especially as in my case, it's associate run. I could be doing anything. I could be either running the business, I could be growing the business, or this could be one of my sideline businesses because it's run so well. I can be making my money elsewhere as well. So do you know what? Yeah, let's just buy it. Doesn't matter what the price is. Let's just buy it because it's going to be worth it.
Okay. No, very, very valid. And I think that's the kind of the kind of last point that Smita's mentioned, is that getting your house in order now, if you're trying to sell over the next few years, is imperative. Buyers want that, to see that consistent data, consistent financial data, consistent clinical data, consistent everything. That's the key to this whole.
Yeah, it's consistency, definitely. It's consistency over time. It's not just consistency over the last 6 months. It's consistency over time, whether that's in your financial control, whether that's in your numbers, whether that's in your effort as a principal dentist to be the best support you can for your clinicians and your support staff, or whether that means your staffing levels changing, not changing. In other words, consistency at every level is marketable, and it can be monetized.
And it's valuable.
It's extremely valuable. It's not only valuable for your own peace of mind, it's valuable for a buyer, but it's just valuable also once you've made that sale. You feel great because you've handed over something that that is your pride and joy, because you've taken that time to add value, not just for the buyer, but it's added value to your life, to your business life, to your team, and to your patients.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much today, Smita, for sharing. We'll be doing a further podcasts on this topic of the DSO playbook over the coming days and weeks ahead. But if you have any questions or need any help, do reach out to me or Smita, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Thanks for listening in to the Dental Business Guide podcast. We welcome your feedback, and if you're enjoying it, please let your friends know too. Until the next time on the Dental Business Guide podcast.